to the Controller Talk podcast presented by Danfoss North America. Our goal is to bring you information about using Danfoss controls in the supermarket and warehouse industry, specifically in the US and Canada. We're doing these twice a month for now. You can catch these podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, and it's also available through the Danfoss Ref Tools app. For the video version, check us out on the North American YouTube page. Search for Controller Talk to see our video collection. I'm Dave Yoder, along with Chris Brown. So Chris, college basketball, full swing here.
It's here.
Yep, March Madness is like right around the corner.
Don't say that. As much as I look forward to it, don't say that.
So Danfoss doesn't have a team, but Penn State does, and so does Maryland, and their records are pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting into the tournament right now, but
So right now Tennessee is undefeated. They're like 14-0, and they're number one in most of the polls.
they're losing tonight.
Are they?
They play Florida. I think they're losing. I'm calling it now. They lose tonight.
You heard it here.
Yep.
He's got money on it. And Auburn is number 2, which neither one of those are basketball schools, in my opinion anyway. I still kind of like UConn, but they're down at around 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And then I saw where Maryland is at 11-4. They were getting some votes for getting in the top 25. Not quite there right now.
They're having a little rough go of it on the West Coast right now.
I see.
They got freshman Queens' his last name. He's a good little player.
Okay.
He's probably going pro next year.
Going pro, huh?
So
Gonna walk away.
yeah, try to enjoy him this year while he's on the team. Just get us to the Sweet 16 at least. We haven't been there in a while.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'll have to run another office March Madness pool.
There you go. Just don't bring the trophy around.
That's right. It's not for money, just for entertainment. PSU or Penn State is 12-3, but
No, are they?
yeah, their strength of schedule must not quite be there to get some recognition. They're having a better year than normal, though. Normally they're like 500 at this point.
Conference plays starting, so that's when it all really matters, right?
Yeah.
See what happens.
Yep, you got it. So another technical question for you. You know, we know what the speed of light is. According to Stephen Wright, comedian,
Yes.
what is the speed of dark? It's a rhetorical question. Don't even try to answer it.
You got that and the stump Chris all out in one shot. Good job.
Oh, I got another one for you later on. You'll be fine. Yeah, it occurred to me that we get calls sometimes, and it's one of those Homer Simpson dope moments when someone does something in a controller and wish they hadn't. And there is no undo button for some of these things. So today we're going to talk about shortcuts and time savers in system managers. And by that I mean if sometimes knowing what not to do will save you a lot of time. It'll save them time, it'll save us time as well. So we're going to run through a few of these and hopefully save people some time and more importantly some grief in the future here. So the first one I want to talk about is just very simply backing up the database. It's kind of an insurance policy against the unforeseen. Sometimes it's because the controller gets wet, controller dies, your buddy comes in, accidentally changes something that wipes out stuff, and you just want to have that backup. And my thought was that if you at least do it twice a year, you're better off than having no backups. And I still get calls for stores that have like 0 backups.
I mean, it's a 5-second thing really with the USB.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense not to do it. It's worth the time for sure.
Right. Because the problem is we don't know when we're going to need it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a good idea.
Yep.
So
agreed.
If you're making a bunch of changes, then it makes sense to back it up more than twice a year. And that'll prevent that search for a file. I had to send someone a file the other day that was 6 years old, and it was the best they had.
Yeah.
So, not an ideal situation. So the 255 and the 355 and the 800 all have something in common, and that is that you don't have to do an eject of the USB when you're done making your saves or whatever on the USB. But the 800A does want to see you eject the USB when you're done.
I can't remember what they were now, but I feel like I've had problems a few times where I didn't do that with the 800A.
It'll kind of yell at you after the fact.
That definitely, I think it might have ended up with a corrupt file too, though, once or twice. So,
Oh, cautionary tale. Here you have it.
yeah,
Yeah.
heed Dave's words on that one for sure.
And I think it has something to do with the Linux operating system, and it just prefers that you eject the USB when you're done on the 800A.
Yeah. I think another area where you definitely want to pay attention to as well is making changes. So there's some areas where if you change something and you change it back, you think, all right, I'm good, I'm okay, everything's safe. But that toggle, that change back to the original, that's going to wipe out in some instances. And obviously you lose your points, you lose control. So you want to pay attention sometimes when you're making the change, or if you're about to, of making sure what you're really about to change, you know it's right, or if it's not, you know what you're going to be putting in if you need to go back.
Right.
So one of the areas, just a couple examples of this, one area is under circuits. If you're under the circuits section and you have one of your options in there is for temperature control, that's where you're either saying whether you're controlling an EEPR stepper valve or you controlling a solenoid through a relay. If you toggle to one and then back to the other, that's going to be something that wipes out that point, whether it's the stepper point or the relay point. So if you're going to do that, maybe just jot down real quick, go to your addresses and jot down the point that's in there just in case you've got to switch that back. But otherwise, you're definitely going to lose that.
Yeah, it can be, in a way, deceiving because you'll back up, you'll look at it, everything looks fine, all your set points are still there, but you didn't realize that the point dropped out for the, in this case, it might be a EEPR valve, the point dropped out, and then in 2 or 3 days you'll be back there because the case is iced up.
Yep. I think on that same page, defrost, if you went from like electric to time off back to electric, I want to say that might do it too. So that's maybe another one to pay attention to.
Drop out your defrost relay. Yeah. The other one comes to mind on the HVAC side is these HVAC types.
I was going to throw that one in at the end.
Yeah. It's AHU and RTU.
Yep. Yeah, you can't just swap between those. Let's go to HVAC at the end, maybe. But while we're in refrigeration, so the circuit type's another one. So normal circuit, system manager, I/O control. That's maybe the top option in the list. And then we obviously see more and more case controllers today. If somebody goes from one to the next, that's another. And then maybe you go from I/O to case controller and then back to I/O. You're going to have to set that all up again, that whole circuit. So that's another one where you've got to pay attention. I mean, your sensors, your relay addressing, everything for set points, your defrost, number of defrosts per day, all that is something you're going to have to configure again if you toggle to one of the case controller options and then go back to I/O again afterwards. Condenser fan section is another area where you can lose some points in there if you're toggling fan from VO to none, back to VO. If you're changing between rate of change and neutral zone, I think are two other ones. Those are all settings that can wipe out other parts of the condenser setup. So definitely make sure in that section in particular you're capturing what your setup is before you start to make changes for the same reason in case you got to go back again. On the HVAC side, I'm trying to remember. I think so. Two of your most commonly used options are AHU and RTU.
Yep.
And they're pretty interchangeable outside of a variable speed fan is probably the biggest difference between the two.
Yeah, because AHU gives you the variable speed fan option, but RTU does not.
Yeah. And so that's one you want to be careful on. If somebody set up an AHU and somebody comes in 3 years later and says, this isn't an air handler, this is a rooftop.
Right.
And they switch it in there, they could be wiping that out. And then if they toggle back, it's the same situation. You're going to have to put all that setup in again. So that HVAC type is another one that's similar to what we're discussing here too, where you don't want to go switching things around without expecting something to get wiped out necessarily when you do that.
Right, because just switching those you can lose relays and sensors.
Yeah, your number of state. I'm picturing some of these retrofit projects we used to have to do on a regular basis. But yeah, that's going to wipe out your number of heating zones, cooling zones, all that.
Yeah.
You'd have to set back up again.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't change that unless you absolutely have to.
Right. Okay. Now, another area is kind of a simple one, but it can trip people up and things can turn out badly, and that is with batteries on the 255 and the 355.
Yep.
So there is no published recommendation on changing these batteries. I would say that my experience is that they do last quite a while, like a pretty long time, before the battery itself would get low enough to give you a low battery alarm. But if you're looking for a recommendation, I would say every 5 years is safe
Yep.
for changing that battery. And of course, if you start seeing low battery alarms, that's a really good time to change the battery,
Yeah.
because you've either got a low battery or some other hardware issue on the board. But typically, it's just a low battery because it could have been there for a long time, considering that some of these 255s have been out there for almost 20 years
Closing
now.
in on it.
Yeah, almost 20 years. So the idea is to back up the database before you change the battery, just so you're covered in case something goes sideways on you. And then you want to leave the power on to the controller, because if
One of the most important parts there.
yeah, if you shut it down to change a battery, you can guarantee it's going to drop the information.
Yeah.
Drop the file right out of there, and then you'll turn it on and it'll not know what to do at all. And then a lot of these battery holders have a clip that comes down from the top to the hold the battery in, and that's the positive side of the battery. And if you bend that too much, it will break, and then you're guaranteed to have a bad day. Because essentially both of these types of controllers are discontinued, and you're going to have to try to figure out who's got a spare. Yeah, so if you only want to bend the battery clip out just enough to slip the battery out, and then you bend it a little bit to slip the new battery in, and you're okay. But if you bend it out too far, it'll snap right at the top.
Or you're sticking a coin underneath to try to take up that little extra space. That you
Yeah. Some of the old ones used to be able to take the thickness of a nickel or something like that, but these probably don't need too much. A dime or a penny is about it.
Yep.
Yeah. But I haven't seen too many that needed that to kind of tighten things up. But yeah, just got to be gentle with those battery clips.
Maybe one other one outside of that comes to mind too with the 800As that people might want to pay attention to is usernames and passwords for anybody that's getting involved with setting those up or using them. The 800A does have timeouts on the account, password, and all that. And
Yep.
a lot of times it defaults to, I think, 120 days.
That's right. Yep.
So that maybe just something else that they're out there is pay attention to that. You can always change that to a permanent account and setup, but the default's usually about 4 months. And so if you don't pay attention to that one, then you could have some issues with the access after a little bit of time.
Right. It can expire on you.
Right.
Yep. Not fun.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our three main things for saving yourself time, heartache, and agony all at the same time. If you have some suggestions, you can always send us more, but those are the three that we came up with. So, Chris, let's talk about how we can stump you, and this might be an easy one for you. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, and you probably haven't seen one of these just lately, but what is the battery number for the 255 and the 355 if you walk to your local retail establishment to buy a new one?
Is it a CR 2025? I'm going to go 2032.
That is correct.
500 a year. Let's go home.
You're 1 for 2. That's better than
Yep.
it's better than the Orioles' batting average will be this year. We know they're not going to hit 500.
The pitching's the problem.
That's a whole other podcast. All right. So as far as listener mail, hey, I don't have any listener mail for this one. So we're going to move right on and tell people how to reach us. If you would like to drop us an email with a suggestion, or if you have a question or comment, just email us at controllertalknorthamerica@danfoss.com. Thanks for listening. Our main guy to make it all happen is Michael the Man Beckerman. Michael, we used to call him Michael, don't call me Mike Beckerman. It still applies. Don't call.
Getting nostalgic in here.
That's right. Don't call him that. Our audio engineer could be Raul Garcia, but I don't know if he'll be needed on this one. Probably not. Maria should be back for the next one, and then we'll all be in good shape. All right. Until next time, for Chris Brown, I'm Dave Yoder. Stay cool.